Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. Super Bowl Sunday coming up. We got a lot of Florida State news to discuss with y'all. I think we start appropriately with the big story of the week. Kurt Weiler joining us, senior writer from the Osceola, and Bob Ferranti. Mike Norvell received a contract extension on Wednesday. It was well earned. It is now through 2029. There are some provisions to keep him here, such as a buyout clause. It will be $6 million in the 2023 calendar year. If any school comes calling, it will be a big price tag to grab him. It will then step down from there, as all these contracts are. They will be written, rewritten, amended again and again and again. But Kurt, what does this commitment say about Florida State and Mike Norvell teaming together?
I mean, everyone was expecting it. Really, I think it was just kind of a matter of time. Of we all knew. I mean, after a season like this, it just feels like the norm of that's when the contract like this kind of follows. Immediate success is kind of followed by the significant raise and what the 3 extra years for him. I mean, I think it's hard to argue he's deserved the raise. I mean, that you've seen the constant progress, you've seen the climb be maybe not as instant as people wanted, but it's been consistently in the right direction. And this season was a big breakthrough. And I think I saw some hesitancy from some people of like this is a lot off of like one really good year. And to that, I would say, I mean, it's kind of the price of doing business in today's college football. I mean, I think it's a gradual. I mean, if you look at the year by year, obviously, I know it's a gradual increase. Where it's not, he's not jumping to 8 million next year by any means. I think he's only jumping to what this year he's jumping to 5.3 and then 7.3 in 2024. But I mean, if you look at the kind of AAV, the average annual value of the contract, it's right there with. I mean, I think it's just behind James Franklin, just ahead of Billy Napier. It's kind of, I mean, it's where Florida State's going to be. I think Mike Norvell definitely, I mean, it was a raise coming from Memphis, but took a lesser deal than like a Willie Taggart took when he got here. I think he wanted more money for his staff, and I think that has paid off for him, where now he gets the more friendly to him contract, no doubt.
So Florida State finishes as a top 10 program. They have the number one production coming back per ESPN's Bill Connolly. This contract, I think, to me says we are going to pay Mike Norvell as if he is approaching top 10 status in terms of head coaching salary. Kurt, I'm not sure where Norvell is in terms of 2023 salaries, but I mean, he's up there. He's in the top, what are we saying, 15 or 20, maybe?
So this past year, he was 33rd nationally at 4.5 million. We should say among public coaches, like all private schools, Notre Dame, Miami aren't obligated to report because they're private. But yeah, he was 33rd nationally, which I would say. I mean, obviously, I think we knew it was a bargain, and we knew it was. I mean, definitely a change from Willie Taggart and even Jimbo Fisher before him, and that was fifth in the ACC and really sixth because I'm sure he was behind Miami and Mario Cristobal as well there. So with that jump to the 5.3, I think just in 2023 alone, he's going to be 24th nationally per the USA Today database. And I think by the end of the contract, once he kind of hits the $7 or $8 million range, which it maxes out at 8.5 million, just over 8.5 million in 2029. Again, if he's still here in 2029, that contract will have been reworked. That likely won't be what he's making then, but again, that's 6 years down the road. But that'd be 11th right now, given I'm sure contracts elsewhere are going to keep going up too. And I imagine, like I said, his will have gone up if he's still here then as well. It's just kind of the way things are going. But yeah, it's I mean, it is a contract worthy of the season he just had. And I think the expectations on him now going into 2023.
So that point, he's finished year three, going to year four. This is his fifth amendment extension, however you want to term it. So these contracts are written to then be rewritten again and again. What I'm
Yep.
really curious about coming up next, what raises did the assistant coaches get? What are the terms there? Obviously, just one new assistant coach in Patrick Surtain. Probably a 2-year deal, as a lot of these position coach contracts are. But what are the financials? I don't believe there's anything in this extension about an expanded assistant coaching pool. I don't remember seeing that when we got it. But anyway, again, that's the next storyline, I think, is what is that commitment to and Alex Atkins to keep him from being poached by a school, by the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. So lots to be watching on the football front. Okay, of course, a couple quick football notes here. The spring practice schedule is out. That's on the Osceola. So we've got dates of those 15 practices, dates for Pro Day. Obviously, Jamie Robinson will be the big focus of the NFL scouts, GMs, and coaches who make that trip to Tallahassee. On the recruiting front, it's getting a little bit quieter. Some offers are going out, but Charles Fishbein has a really nice story on 13 prospects at the top of the 2024 list for Florida State. We've done a lot of profiles on these guys, interviewed them as part of junior days, but he's got a nice story. It kind of puts it all in one nice package for you. As an Osceola subscriber, please check that out on theosceola.com. Okay, so I think let's transition to a busy Thursday night for us. Florida State softball made its debut, but you were able to catch Florida State women's basketball down in Miami. It was another one of those head-scratching fourth periods for a couple of the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it was a head scratching second half, really. I mean, I think Florida State kind of opened the scoring in the second half to open a 13-point lead at Miami. And I mean, a chance, a real impressive win that would only kind of further boost that resume, as Florida State's kind of right on that hosting NCAA tournament bubble. And they let it slip away. I mean, as red hot as Florida State was, I think they're 8 of 14 from three in the first half. They went ice cold. They were 50% from the free throw line, which is, I mean, pretty dreadful. Especially, I mean, they were best in the ACC in free throw shooting coming into last night. So kind of an anomaly and definitely at a bad time. And Haley Cavender, who I know transferred from Fresno State, her and her twin sister are like the NIL superstars, aren't they? I think they're like some of like the very publicized people who've taken advantage of it a lot. And I mean, she had a career game. I think she went for 33 points, and Miami, I mean, kept shooting threes and kept hitting three. I think she had 5 threes and a lot of free throws down the stretch to protect the lead. And FSU kind of missed the opportunity for what would have been a really nice win. And perhaps not so coincidentally, I don't know, I guess, truthfully, if that top 16 was set in stone already before tonight's games or last night's games or not, but Florida State not in that top 16 that was revealed late last night at like 10:30. Who knows why?
So about that top 16, what I think is a little bit interesting. And if you're looking at total resume for the full season, I get it. If you are looking at head-to-head, I would argue Duke is the number 8 overall seed. Florida State beat them recently in Tallahassee. Florida State has beaten North Carolina, the number 14 national seed. That was up at Chapel Hill, I believe, earlier this year. Coming up on Sunday, Florida State will play at Virginia Tech, number 13 national seed. So if you're just looking head-to-head, you might have a little bit of a, wonder why they did that. Again, if you look at the full body of work, maybe it's more understandable. But again, Brooke Wyckoff has a 20-win season. They were the first ACC team to 10 wins. They did that, I believe, a week ago. So there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic that the Seminoles may jump into this top 16. Again, this is a look-in. This is kind of like a college football playoff weekly where they give you some kind of transparency. Here's what we're thinking right now. So here's what the NCAA selection committee is thinking right now. I find a little bit of flaw in it. Kurt, what do you think?
Yeah, Kelly Graham, like we can shout her out. She does good work for covering women's basketball ACC Network. I think posted kind of the resumes of the teams yesterday before the announcement. I think what hurt Florida State was strength of schedule. I think the strength of schedule relative to a lot of other teams in that kind of range hurt them. Obviously, I think that's only going to get helped further down the stretch here. I mean, that was before last night's game, before this weekend, another chance. I mean, at what number 11 Virginia Tech, another chance for an even more impressive win if they manage to pull that one off on the road, and a few other games left. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking I would have Florida State in that top 16. Just I mean, for a lot of what you mentioned alone. But I mean, they're what 13th in net, or they were 13th in net. I imagine they fell off a little bit after last night, but it's all still in front of them. It's just a matter of, I mean, how do they finish? I mean, did they reach their peak, or is there kind of another level? Can they get there again to potentially make a postseason run?
Yeah, Florida State controls its destiny. If you want to look at it that way, like you're saying, Virginia Tech is the Sunday game up in Blacksburg, 2 p.m. on the ACC network. So if you've got some Super Bowl pregame plans, so be it, but you might want to have a second screen looking at what the women are doing, because that's going to be a pivotal game as we move into the final 5 ACC regular season games. And honestly, it's a pretty favorable stretch if you're just kind of looking at it. It's Virginia Tech, back home for Syracuse, home for Georgia Tech, at Wake Forest, and up at Clemson. So you have to feel pretty good about how you might finish out the rest of that ACC schedule if you're Florida State. Okay, in 1 week from today, we will be talking opening day for Florida State baseball. I hope the weather is better next weekend than it's looking like today, because it's causing all kinds of delays for Florida State softball. But well, hey,
may affect fan day. We'll see. I mean, Florida State baseball fan day is tomorrow, and I haven't heard anything yet, but the forecast doesn't look great for getting that kind of final scrimmage and the autograph session and all that. I'm sure they could still find a way to do autographs, but we'll see if they can play tomorrow at 1 when they're supposed to.
You had a chance. This preseason's been good for us to get to know the players, what they think of Link Jarrett and the coaches. But also these coaches are really great conversationalists, talking about themselves and the players that they coach. You sat down with Chuck Ristano for a story we're going to have Friday, later today on the Osceola. Your thoughts on Chuck and just in that extended interview you had with him?
He's an impressive guy. Definitely. I think y'all in the times where you get to hear him, we might have to get him on here sometime at some point during the season, because he enjoys talking. Definitely. I mean, could fill a 15-20 minute conversation, no problem. Enjoyable guy. I mean, he talked pretty candidly about in the interview. I mean, this is his first time really having good baseball weather. He's been in college baseball as a player and then coach, I mean, over 20 years. And kind of this is his first experience. He's been at Sacred Hearts, where he played. He's been at Monmouth up in New Jersey. He's been at Temple and then Notre Dame the last 12 years. So he's finally getting to kind of enjoy. He said this feels like October to him, which he's not used to, kind of those outdoor games this at this point in the schedule. I think he's enjoying that. He talked pretty candidly about, I mean, Link Jarrett, obviously the baseball mind, but also Link Jarrett, the man, and how he just has enjoyed because obviously he was at Notre Dame long before, I think 9 years before Jarrett arrived in 2020. But I mean, because of all that, just felt compelled to follow him here and be the pitching coach. And he's inherited a pretty interesting situation, no doubt. And I get into that in the story. I mean, obviously Florida State's replacing a lot of innings, a lot of wins, a lot of, I mean, their top 2 starters and their top 2 most frequently used relievers. So there's a lot of innings kind of that will have to be replaced. But he talked about, I mean, I kind of got him talk a little about the advantages of maybe a clean slate for him as the new pitching coach arriving. And he's been impressed, I think, with a lot of what he's seen from that group. And it's not, I think that group definitely has more question marks entering the season than the lineup. And that has nothing to do with him. I think his track record shows. I mean, he is at places that like a Notre Dame that hasn't been, I mean, a historic baseball power by any means, had a great deal of success building out that pitching staff. And so, yeah, he's an interesting guy, no doubt. I think we'll have to get him on here sometime. He'd fit in great here on Sidelines, and I hope y'all will read the story. I just wrapped it up this morning before getting on here.
Yeah, so check that story out, Chuck Ristano, the interview with Kurt Weiler. And yeah, we're working to get Link Jarrett next week on the show. We're working to get some more interviews, baseball, softball, and we'll move into football as they get a little bit closer to spring practice to try to bring you some of those voices one-on-one here on Seminole Sidelines. Again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on our YouTube channel, Facebook, or Twitter. All right, so let's work a little bit backwards. I think I skipped past FSU softball as I had created my run sheet for what we wanted to talk about. But again, I think the reason why is the weather is playing all kinds of schedule mayhem. Florida State is going to try to play Purdue, just one game today. It could be 4:45, but really with the rain, likely much later. They're trying to get some other games in. This is a 3-team tournament in the Joanne Graff Invitational. And the field was in good shape Thursday night. They put the tarp out there just after the game when the rain started. Florida State truly got that second game in, and then the rain really started. But I think what was impressive about Florida State, 14 innings, only 1 run allowed. Kat Sandercock pitched incredibly well, 1 hitter, 7 innings. And then Allison Royalty started the second game, got some help from McKenna Reed on the back end. She had 6 strikeouts in 3 innings. So a really nice debut from a freshman there. And yes, Michaela Edenfield did those Michaela Edenfield things. It was a 3-1 count. The ball was up, and she crushed it. I was sitting on the party deck, and by the way, I'm in love with this party deck down the left field line. Bring your chair, sit there, get some food from the concession stand. But it is a great vantage point to watch games for Florida State softball. When the ball left Michaela's bat, you could see it was gone immediately. You knew it. You watched it over onto, was that Spirit Way, Champions Way? I need to know.
I think is that Stadium? No, that's not Stadium. I think it might be Spirit Way. I think you're right.
Yeah. So, but it was a absolute no doubter. She was maybe aiming for the parking garage, fell a little bit short there, but it was crushed, absolutely crushed. So it was a really good debut. I think some people are saying, well, the score maybe should have been more of a blowout. Lipscomb looked pretty good defensively. Looked like they had gotten in a lot of practice. This is not a northern team. It's not like Purdue. Lipscomb, being in the Nashville area, had some chance to play, really made some diving catches in the outfield. So this was a game that, it probably could have been higher scoring for Florida State, but in the end, they controlled it and got the doubleheader sweep. We'll see what happens Friday, Saturday here for Florida State softball. Okay. So now we've
games.
Hopefully more than one game. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we've done all the good, the not so good. Florida State men's basketball, and we'll kind of move toward the finish here. There were some really good moments that I think we need to hit on from the Clemson game. I thought just the way they moved the ball in certain possessions in the half-court offense, how they attacked the middle of the zone, notably with Matthew Cleveland. There were some real positives there, some passing that we just haven't seen in however many games Florida State has played so far. I know they're 8-17. So in 24 prior games, we hadn't seen it. We did see some positives. We didn't see enough positives, not nearly enough three-pointers made. They took a ton and missed 3/4 of a ton, let's be honest. Yeah. Kurt, your thoughts after watching that game?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There was a chunk in the middle of that game where they really had figured out the zone. I mean, they built a 6-point halftime lead, I think. And I mean, it wasn't even like that lead disappeared right away. They were hanging around really until the closing minutes, but it gets overshadowed by, I mean, the beginning and ends of the games where they just could not figure out the zone, and their strategy was jack up threes, which is what Syracuse wants you to do against that zone. I mean, especially a team like Florida State, which has a great three-point shooter in Darren Green, but I would say it's probably not a great three-point shooting team as a whole. I think you talked about, I mean, how they broke down the zone in the passing. I think a very encouraging thing for the future we've talked about, I mean, Cam Corrin and the strides he's made. It felt like the best person at breaking down the zone, at finding Matthew Cleveland there kind of at the free throw line, was Chandler Jackson, who's another freshman who's really come on of late. I think he had 7 assists at halftime, which, I mean, he'd only had, I think, 3 was his previous career high. I mean, it was a breakthrough game for him. I mean, he is say what you will about the team's defensive effort at times. I think you always see it from him. He plays with intensity. He doesn't always, I think the coaches would be the first to say the execution wasn't definitely always there to start the year and has kind of taken some time, but I think you're seeing it more and more. And that's another piece I think you're encouraged about for the future is, I mean, just, it was a really nice, it felt like a lot of the activity was going through him.
Yeah, Chandler played 25 minutes. That was a season high. He had played a high of, I think, 19 minutes coming in. Coach Hamilton has kind of said, yes, Chandler's coming on. He's more comfortable. That thumb injury set him back in the preseason, but so he missed some time. He missed almost 2 months, it sounds like, in that preseason. So he's got to get his conditioning up to play the volume of minutes with the intensity that the coaches want, and that's the same predicament that this entire roster is in, because they're all being asked to play more impactful roles. With a Cam Fletcher out, with a Jalen Gainey out, and yeah, I thought Chandler made some passes Wednesday night that I had not seen anybody in a Florida State uniform make this year. I mean, there were the vision, seeing it all unfold, open court, half court, it was there. So like what he brought to the table. And now we'll see Sunday at noon against Pittsburgh. Yeah, I think the Panthers are going to be back looking for blood after that upset, a couple weeks ago up at Pittsburgh. So we'll see how that plays out. I think if you're Florida State, you need to get back on track. Obviously, yes. How do you do it? Rebound better. We've seen some double-digit rebound disparities of late out of the Seminoles, so it's tough to bring that energy, every possession because you're playing high minutes. But you got to figure out how to be a little bit better on the boards. Quite honestly, make that three with some level of consistency. The turnovers were down Wednesday. The assist to turnover ratio was very good, all things considered. So we'll see how this, what Florida State is fighting for the rest of the way is, in my view, freshman development, but also they want to stay out of that predicament of playing on the first day of the ACC tournament. This is a mindset of a team that thinks they might spoil March for a few programs. And I think it's unlikely, very unlikely, they will be able to make a deep run in Greensboro. But what they want to do is steal a couple here or there, make some noise, and finish on a high note, so you can go into that offseason saying, okay, we've kind of put that non-conference schedule behind us, and we're moving towards something better into that offseason. Okay, so we've kind of hit all the good bases here. Let's wrap up with this. Some of our friends we've gotten interviewed through the years, Derek Noddy, Josh Sweat, guys are going to be in the Super Bowl on Sunday night. It's looking forward to watching. These aren't my teams or your teams, but these are guys that we've covered. We know a lot of their backstories. It was fun to get to know them through the years. So, Kurt, first of all, do you have a pick, Chiefs or Eagles? And do you have maybe a quick story to share about Josh or Derek?
Give me the Eagles. I think that defensive line. I think they have 4 guys who have 10 sacks this year. I mean, I think they might have like one of the more sacks by a team ever in NFL history in a season. I think, I mean, Pat Mahomes, what he did against the Bengals was impressive, but I think it's possibly still not 100%, even with kind of 2 weeks of rest between games after that. I think it was an ankle he was dealing with, an ankle sprain. And yeah, I think they're gonna be too impactful. I mean, that offense with Jalen Hurts. I mean, say what you will about how Jalen Hurts' college career played out, but he's been fun to watch him and what he's become. So I guess I'm saying I'm taking Josh Sweat over Derek Noddy. I mean, both I know both play a good bit. I think Derek had a sack against the Jags in the postseason. I was watching that game and I saw Derek get a sack. I mean, Derek's a guy who, it's funny, Derek was during that time of interviews when we were kind of getting a small group of players near the end of Jimbo's tenure. It wasn't a very diverse group of players we could legitimately request and get to talk to like we have today. But Derek was one of that group who I really enjoyed talking to. I thought he was always very insightful. I think you could tell some guys who kind of didn't particularly care to be there after practice. It was 5, 6 o'clock, whatever time it was. He always, I thought, was engaging and seemed like he wanted to be there. I mean, Josh is a great story. I think we kind of unfortunately missed out the full Josh Sweat experience while he was here just because of that injury he suffered in high school before coming to Florida State. But I mean, I think everyone always thought this is who he could be. He was that high 5-star recruit coming out of high school, and it's been impressive to watch. I mean, the guy he has become. I mean, kind of like we said, like the recruiting rankings would tell you they always thought he was going to be.
Yeah, the first time we saw Josh Sweat, the first day of practice, his freshman year, I thought to myself, this guy looks like someone who has the full intention of trying to play game 1, not game 5, not down the road, not when the coaches and the trainers say it's good, game 1. So from that day, we tried to kind of gather information and talk to dad and high school coach and all that, and get the backstory. And I think the backstory is, a catastrophic injury. He candidly said about a year later, he almost lost that leg because of how bad the artery damage was. So it puts in perspective just how miserable that injury is for a young man who's 17, 18 years old, but then have the determination to bounce back. We got to see him that spring, as an early enrollee. He was here working with Florida State's training staff, working hard just to figure out, can I make it back? And it was really cool, I think, to watch that. There was criticism of him, I think, because he did want to wear that knee brace, and he always wore the brace. Did it limit his get off significantly. But when it came to pro day, he took it off, and I think he's just gotten more comfortable as he put more and more time off that knee. But again, it was cool to watch Josh Sweat's kind of story. Like you mentioned, Derek Noddy, always a very colorful interview. I think he left us laughing a lot of nights.
Yeah.
So a really, really fun interview in Derek Noddy, and a guy who in the community, he's paid for a lot of dog adoptions in Kansas City. So a guy who has, built his sort of niche within the foundation and the charitable efforts out there in Kansas City.
Well, and he's a guy who I think he became a quite productive player at Florida State, but it's been nice to see. I mean, I think he was a guy who you wondered how long he would stay on an NFL roster. And as it turned out, I mean, he has carved out a really nice role where he plays a good bit and is in what year? I think year 5 now, year 4 or 5, somewhere in that range. I mean, looking back now, it's pretty crazy looking at, I mean, that 1-2 punch in Florida State 2015 recruiting class of Derwin James and Josh Sweat. And they both kind of become the players we thought they would.
Yeah, some good pickups out of the DMV, in those years. Noddy, Sweat, Ronald Darby. There's a Eddie Goldman long list. Yes, good job by Odell Higgins bringing those guys down as a recruiter in that area back in the day. All right, well, guys, again, happy Friday to you. Hope you're looking forward to FSU Baseball Fan Day, FSU softball games if you're watching them either here in Tallahassee or on the stream. Super Bowl Sunday coming up, women's basketball, men's basketball, lots to look forward to. Again, if you're watching us live, thanks to you. We'll be here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12:30 p.m. on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you can't catch us, we'll upload the audio to your favorite podcast feed so you won't miss anything. Again, we have Mac Leonard here on Wednesday working to nail down Link Jarrett potentially for Wednesday's show, but we'll give you an update on that on Monday, as well as some other guests who might be coming down the road. But again, for Kurt Weiler, I'm Bob Ferranti. Thanks for watching and listening. This has been Seminole Sidelines.